The name Westfield, is it true that it comes from the Westfields of Elizabeth?
Westfields of Elizabeth, yeah, yeah. Scotch Plains was apparently settled by a lot of settlers from Scottish descent, Scotch Plains, and you know the different names have a derivation. We researched them. Cranford, supposedly Crane's Ford. The Crane family was big in that area.
They were big in Elizabeth too, though.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, these early settling families were very large, and it drives genealogists crazy. You know, there's a million John Ogdens, you know, in the generation. Their family genealogy is like that, the textbook. So yeah, a lot of those early names, a lot of them still survive in the area. Yeah.
Well, Ogden is a big name in Elizabeth
Exactly.
as well. And which signer is buried underneath the church? Is that Clark underneath the church
Abraham
on Broad
Clark.
Street?
That
Or
would
is
be
that
that Jonathan Dayton, the
Dayton
signer
is
of the
buried underneath the
Constitution.
church.
Somewhere, they're not even sure by now, but there's a plaque in the foundation indicating somewhere where his grave was.
Now, the cemetery
yeah.
across the street, is that part of the walking tour?
First Presbyterian
Right.
Church, I would, yes.
That's a whole session
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
afternoon of the 4 afternoon sessions. That's one of them. The people will stay there for the afternoon. There is so much there to see. The church itself, but the graveyard.
Yeah,
is
the
just,
graveyard alone is a record of this area's history. There are the graves of 227 soldiers of the American Revolution, including 3 generals, are buried there. Not to mention the fighting parson, James Caldwell. It's an incredible
Is
cemetery.
James Caldwell buried there?
Yes. Yeah,
And Hannah, too.
Yeah, and his wife.
But they were actually shot in Union.
Yeah.
Well, she was.
She was.
He was shot down at the waterfront in Elizabeth. He was apparently trying to visit prisoners, and a sentry shot him. And in fact, his funeral was held in the steps of Boxwood Hall. I mean, the connection between these places and the events were. It's hard to visualize today what the town went through in those days, but it was really devastated by the raids of the British. They were over in Staten Island, thousands, and they would come over periodically and raid and ransack. And so.
You know, when I visited Boston not long ago, I went up there to the old North Church.
Yes, yes. Mhm.
Which has all the English generals and colonels. I mean, it wasn't the Patriots. So I never looked at the American Revolution from the eyes of the English. But if you go to the old North Church, that's exactly what's there.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, we took a trip there with a student group some years ago, and the docent at the North Church said he was so proud of the church it went back to 1751 and so forth. And afterwards, I told him, "Well, we have a church that goes back to 1664." You know, he didn't want to hear that, but we do. And actually, you mentioned the church and the grounds. That's where the government of New Jersey began. The first General Assembly met there in 1668.
In that church.
That's where. It was a meeting house at that time, combined, a church and meeting house. And that's where the government in New Jersey began, right?
And
at
Princeton
that spot.
University began on that corner as well.
Nearby, a few blocks away, yeah. It was started by Jonathan Dickinson, who was a pastor in the 1740s and originally called the College of New Jersey. And he got permission, got a charter, which was signed by Governor Belcher, who lived in the Belcher-Ogden house. And then it eventually moved to Princeton. Yeah.
Now, as we wrap up, is there any number they can call for additional information on these programs, or where can they contact you?
Sure.
Barbara?
Our telephone number is 908-558-2550. 908-558-2550.
Okay.
Charles, I want to thank you for taking the time to join us on the show.
Not at all, Mayor. Always a pleasure to see you.
Appreciate
and,
you being here.
I appreciate you being such a supporter of our local history and the projects
big
we
history
do.
fan.
I know that.
And Barbara, thank you for coming on the
And
show.
we'll see you at the
We'll see you at the
conference.
Historic
Yeah.
Conference on June 2nd. Thank you very much.
Definitely. Thank you.
For Barbara Fuller and Charles Shawcross, I'm Chris Bolwage. We'll see you next week on another edition of Our City.